Welcome back to the Orthodontic Pearls Podcast, where we share tips and tricks to better your practice and your life. Today is officially the start of season 2, guys, which means we made it a whole year without being canceled. So congratulations to all of us. How does that feel?
Feels good. You know, it's nice to have been at events and people coming up to us saying, "Hey, I love your podcast." And I, took so many great, pearls from that. It's really neat to know that a lot of people we don't even know are listening are coming to us saying that they really appreciate what they've learned. And we're excited to do another season because people want it. So let's do it.
I agree. How are you doing over there, Tom Selleck?
You know what? First thing I got to say is I loved your intro. Welcome to the Orthodontic Pearls Podcast.
I'm trying to match Chris's energy, man.
Intro.
I know I can't match it, but I'm going to try.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Yeah, doing well. And, I feel really fortunate to be doing this with you guys. Of course, we've already had good relationships, and I feel like this has been a great opportunity to deepen those relationships and to work together. And we've talked about this before, but to become more aware of each other's deficiencies and our own deficiencies as we, strive to make a better product and have something that's at once meaningful, but at the same time predictable. Do you know what I mean? It's balancing the systems with spontaneity. So It's been a really cool experience and something that I've really enjoyed doing. And honestly, it's been one of the highlights of my year, just in terms of having meaningful discussions. These have been some of the more meaningful discussions for me. So I'm excited about it and look forward to season 2.
Well, I think this has been an awesome experience for everyone. I'm excited to continue this as well. Now, Chris and I, we just got back from a vacation. Chris just got back, but we were both on a Disney cruise, but separate Disney cruises. I wanted to talk a little bit about that. It was our first Disney cruise. We took our 3-year-old, but we left our 7-month-old at home. And, Chloe is very much a mixed bag. I think it was super fun having her see all the characters. And she did that bibbity bobbity makeover and looked like a little princess. And it was so cute. Of course, with a 3-year-old, it's always a mixed bag. And one of the things, the very first night she did that bibbity boppity makeover. And for those of you who don't know what that is, they do a full on like glitter. You pick out a dress based on a Disney princess. They do like hair extensions and just really, it's incredible, the finished product here. And part of this is they give you this wand. And it is a substantial wand. It's a meaty metal wand. I was surprised at how heavy this thing is. But it lights up and everything, very, very fancy. We get back to our room, and our daughter stays up later than we do. She's 3 years old, but she outlasts even me, and I'm a night owl. So we're exhausted and we're ready to go to bed, and she wants to stay up and watch TV. So we stick her in the room, and you can close the curtains. That's part of the Disney rooms. You can divide the room in two. So she's sitting there watching some Halloween special on the TV. And, as I'm dozing off to sleep, I hear her banging on something, with that wand. And I God knows what that could be. And she's saying, bibbity, boppity, boo. And I go into the room, I pull back the curtain, and the TV is smashed to shit. And she is just sitting there banging on it. There's like spider webs throughout this thing. And I'm just like looking at her, Chloe, why would you do that? What on earth would prompt you to do that? Where did you learn to do that to a TV? Why would you think that's appropriate? And she just kind of like looks at me and smiles. And I'm like, you broke the TV. And she says, well, just buy a new one. And I just like looked at her. I'm like, this is exactly who I don't want her to grow up into, but I thought about that and recognized that whenever one of her toys breaks or she makes a mistake, and it's usually something small, like she drops an egg or something and it cracks and makes a mess. And so I'm like, it's okay. We'll just use a new one. We'll just get a new one. And I think, that's what I've trained her for, is that she has no concept of money. So I ultimately told her, well, we are going to have to buy a new TV, but that's expensive. And we're going to have to return all the toys we got you on this trip in order to pay for that, which she did not like. And she immediately apologized. And I said, it's okay, sweetie. You made a mistake, but I need you to learn this lesson. And then immediately she says, can I have my wand back? And I said, no, I just said we have to return that to pay for the TV. She says, but I said, I'm sorry. It was one of those bittersweet moments, like fatherhood. So it was cute on one level, but I was pissed. And so that was kind of basically how our vacation with our 3-year-old went. And Chris, you were on a similar ship maybe a week later. How was your time?
It was good. I think it's quintessential Disney when you talk about bringing a 3-year-old, whether it's on a cruise or Disneyland or Disney World. And I think a lot of us can agree sometimes the best ride is the air-conditioned tram back to your ar after you're dealing with a toddler that's just been going crazy. Our kids are a little older, so we were on the other side of it, which was nice. We brought them on a Disney cruise before and they loved it. The biggest thing that stood out to me was the quality of the shows. And if you've been to a Disney cruise before, they are Broadway level. We saw Aladdin and they had this magic carpet that was actually like flying through the stage, and the way that the screen was behind you, it actually felt like they were flying through the stage. And it was next level. The sand was blowing everywhere. And then they have interactive moments with it. So that was great. And then of course, as an orthodontist and talking with Grant Collins, he loves Disney and he says, pay attention to the quality of service and what do they do. And, it was really amazing to see that they remembered our names. They had the same server that came to see us. They remembered the food that we liked. They kept us together. There was a time when there was a particular dessert that Omar wanted, and they had it the first night. And he says, well, we don't have it at this restaurant. And he says, but I'm going to go to another restaurant just for you and go get it. And that kind of stuff. So that was kind of neat from a Pearls type of perspective. But overall, the kids had a blast. They get to hang out with other kids. And, Disney knows how to do that very, very well.
A couple interesting observations are, you mentioned the shows are amazing, right? And this is just like on a cruise line. So there's not like a huge audience. And I think what a company like Disney does well, of course, we can always criticize them and we can always say, well, it's too this or it's too that or it's too idealistic or, you know what I mean? It's not complex enough, this and that and the other. And of course, we could talk about that for a long time. But I think the main thing that I take away from that story is that if you get people to believe in what they're doing, like to have a sense of purpose, they will perform a Broadway quality musical, or at least to the best of their capabilities, on a cruise ship, right?
Yeah.
And so it's just a reminder that if we can have our team members really feel a sense of purpose at work, like there's you're connected in a deeper way here. You're not just punching in and clocking in and whatever. But if they can buy into it, I think that's how you elevate your own office. So just applying that Disney experience, to our offices. And then Andy, you mentioned, of course, Chloe saying, but I said, I'm sorry. And what that reminds me of is, it makes me think of myself. And it's like, gosh, in life, we're often so formulaic. And we think, well, if I do this, then this will happen. And then when it doesn't happen, we think, well, wait a second, that's not fair.
Yeah.
Right. And I think in so many ways, I can think of how childlike I am when I think, well, I prepared enough, or I did this, and then this thing happened that was out of my control or whatever. And you think, but I did, I was sincere, or I was this or that. Doesn't that count for something? It's like, well, sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah.
Sometimes life is just, hey, here's the outcome. It's not what you like, but this is the way that it needs to be. And of course, we can all be so childish. So anyway, it's funny. It's actually funny because it's true.
Yeah.
I mean, the reason that's funny is because you can just think, oh God,
it's very relatable.
I can see myself in that.
Very relatable. Well, a couple of points of order. So first of all, we recognize that up to now, the show has been pretty unidirectional, but we'd love to start discussing your feedback. So if you'd like to join the discussion, please shoot us an email at orthodonticpearls@gmail.com or reach out to any of us on Facebook. And any interesting points or counterpoints to what we say on the show will be shared, and along with a shout out. And as an added bonus, one of us will give you a crisp high five the next time we see you at a meeting. We also want to announce that we'll be switching from a bi-weekly to a monthly release. One of the things we've learned is how difficult it is to coordinate the busy schedules of 3 practice owners plus a guest. And we want to approach the show with a bit more intention and focus on quality, which we believe this will allow us to do. Well, we are recording this show about a week after our MOPC meeting. And if you guys listen to us, you know that was held at the Kennedy Space Center. So the topic today is going to be some of the things we learned from the meeting and our own personal takeaways. We'll go at it from each of our different perspectives here. But before we get into all that, we do have some updated practice performance data from our friends at Gauge. And this is for the month of September. This is nationwide data. Again, keep in mind, this is a cohort of just the Gauge practices, but overall, pretty good month. Production was up almost 9%. Collections were up about 6.5%. Exams up 6%, with adult exams up about 4.5% and child exams up 7%. As far as starts go, that translated pretty much the same. So we saw an increase in total starts of 6.5%. Adult starts were actually flat, so no change there, but a big jump in child starts at 11.5%. So very, again, it seems like kids have been driving this year for many, many practices. And finally, aligner starts were flat, which is, considering the general trend there that aligner starts have been down, I'd consider that a success. So maybe the decline of aligners has plateaued a little bit. But overall, it seems to be an increasingly more minority stake of practices in general. All right. Well, I do want to talk about MOPC, and I know this was certainly a meeting for the books. I mean, the Kennedy Space Center playing under that rocket, the special effects were top notch. Of course, we did have to contend with some hurricane level rains and having a meeting at a federal facility during a government shutdown, which I'm sure presented some logistical challenges. So, I want to hear from you guys. You were boots on the ground at this meeting. How did it go? And what did you learn?
I love seeing all the people that really grew up loving space, see that inner child come out. A lot of people came in these full astronaut suits and, their whole team dressed up, and just really being in awe of walking in and seeing all the rockets that previously had gone, into space, and then walking into the center. Anytime you do it at a government facility, like we saw with the USS Midway, there are a lot of pros to that because you can be in these unique places. And then, like you said, sometimes, there could be rain and, security. It's not, hey, let my friend into the party. Hey, that was the biggest thing that I spent time on, was emailing people back. Like, I can't just let you in. You have to get, level 5 clearance or whatever, right? You have to. The
white friends seem to have no problem getting past that security. I think you guys go right by.
Did you have some trouble, Andy?
What's that? They asked me for 2 forms of ID. I was like, I didn't see you ask Chris for that.
No, we had to get 2 forms to even get in early to set up. So that was the crazy part, is you had to have 2 forms of ID for us setting up to set up the center. We had to bring in our own generator. We had to bring in all of our equipment. My parents drove in a minivan all of the band equipment from Arizona all the way to Florida and back, which is crazy. And then, there's a lot that just goes into everything, from the sound to the production to every band member coming out and putting in the time, and the Bite Straight Boys, which you were a part of, Andy, and Dino Watt dancing with us. You had to learn all 3 numbers, sync to the music, and be ready to go. There's just so much that goes into that 2 hours, but everybody had such a good time. And I think the quality content was better this year than it's ever been. All of our speakers have delivered so many pearls, and we stuck to a new format, saying basically you need to give a summary slide at the end of at least 3 to 5 pearls that you can put into your practice on Monday.
I love that.
I think that kept attention. We had Ben Fishbein at the end, which talked about his practice going from 2 million to 29 million, and like how he did it and what are things you can do. And it was kicked off with Grant Collins talking about team culture and how to recover from tough experiences. So the fact that the room was full the whole way through is amazing. And so I really thanks to everyone who took the time to come and to take time out of their busy practice during a busy month. We know we had a busy month too, Andy, to come learn. So next year in November, I think it'll be better because it's typically down for practices. The weather in Arizona is even better. We're going to do a rock star theme. It's going to be awesome.
And next year it's going to be a Talking Stick Resort again, which has basically alternated every other year. I personally like that. You and I live about 5 minutes from each other, so it's convenient. And next year, I believe the party will be on Talking Stick property as well.
Yeah, what we found this year is taking the shuttle. Anytime you take a shuttle, like a third of the people are like, I'm tired, I'm going to go back to the room, right? But if it's all in one place, if you have your hotel in the same place as the venue, and then you have the party, which we're going to rent out the whole pool space and bring in a stage and still have RELAPSE there, and it'll be a rock and roll theme, so you can dress up as your favorite, Kiss and Journey and Guns N' Roses, all that stuff. So get that kind of inner side, and our, even though we play a little bit of everything, it'll be a little more rock focused, which is our favorite genre. So I think it'll be really nice. A lot of us. So the goal was, I think what we learned is, Kennedy Space Center is awesome. It's a unique place, and every other year we're going to do something like that. Go somewhere amazing that's unique, like being under a rocket, but then also the predictability of being there and the convenience of having everything in one space. We always go back to Kennedy to Talking Stick because the rooms are awesome. Yeah. The rates are incredible for what you get. There's a casino there. There's so much to do. The weather is amazing. It's just really great. So it's nice to have a great place to come back to, and we're excited to still make it better. Each year we will make it better. That's always our promise to you, that it will be better. So better speakers, better music, all that stuff. So excited to have you guys join us.
And now MOPC is the only big private meeting. Is that right, Brian?
Well, honestly, I don't really think about things in terms of competition. It's just how my mind works. And that's been true even like in dental school. I would share my notes because I found that when I think in terms of like competition, it produces more anxiety. And I don't function as well under anxiety. And so I tend to just have focus on what can I control? Well, I can control how prepared I am. I can control how honest I am in my assessment, right? And so to echo some of the things that Chris said, I think the meeting was great in so many ways. The venue was awe-inspiring. I think it helped each of us remember what it feels like to be a part of something bigger. I mean, when you consider space and you consider the wonder of that, of course, we lose that as adults because we start to define things and then we attach meanings to these definitions, and our world kind of actually becomes smaller, interestingly, I think, as we get older. So just to reconnect with like this bigger, more universal view is like, wow, really cool. I am always impressed with the quality of speakers we have. I loved sitting in on the lectures and really paying attention to each speaker and just knowing how much each speaker puts into their presentation and how intentional that is. And to even like watch the delivery, I really enjoyed that. And I felt like we have a really high caliber type of person who speaks. And to me, I could sense that they each had their heart and their mind in it. You know what I mean? So I thought there was a really great balance there. And of course, there were some frustrations. I mean, just like you guys have both said, weather wasn't great. There were some convenience things in terms of being off site, not staying, not being at the hotel, because we all love convenience. And of course, the older we get, the more comfortable we tend to want to become, the less we want to be out of our comfort zones. And so especially at a CE meeting, I mean, I definitely can see why you'd want to just bop back to your hotel room during the meeting to go change or go to the bathroom or take a nap if you didn't sleep much the night before, right? So it's balancing all these things. And I think, Chris, you and I talked about it and talked about it with Chelsea and my wife, Diana. And I think there's a balance between novelty and predictability. And the reason that Chris can say it's going to be better every year and have that be true is we're committed each year to honestly assessing what went well and what didn't go well. Like the Kennedy Space Center, the Wi-Fi was spotty, right? So that's an inconvenience. And the layout, I mean, well, it wasn't a bad layout. It was actually, I think it in some ways was really good. And of course, in other ways, not as good. But the point is just focusing on what went well and what could be better. We're going to bring all that information to Talking Stick. And I think Talking Stick does lend itself really well to both attendees and sponsors. The layout is really great. And I mean, even just considering like when you walk out of the meeting, you're walking out into this hall with huge windows and there's natural light coming into the hall. I mean, I know this is like focusing on the details, but that stuff does matter. Rather than walking out into a hall where it's like there's no natural sunlight. It's just like it's totally enclosed. You're on the 50th floor. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it is a beautiful venue and it just kind of feels good. And we've done it before. So I think this next year, we're really going to focus on convenience, predictability, and quality education, right? And of course, the fun element is always kind of what enlivens it, right? We have this party. And one thing I love about our meeting, and I would just say our group, is I do feel like there's a great culture. There's a great culture. The type of people who attend and these loyal people that come year after year, and even the sponsors, there's a great culture. And so obviously, some things went great and according to plan, and other things didn't go as great and were kind of disappointing or frustrating. And I think that's part of it is being able to balance both of those things and being honest enough to address the deficiencies, but also seeing what went well and like doubling down on those things. So anyway.
Well, I think that's absolutely right. We have to learn from what went well and also what didn't go well, and then continue improving every year. And I think this is the best one yet, and I think that it'll only continue. I'm really looking forward to next year because it's in my backyard, so that's going to be really fun. Well, Chris, I want to get into some of the pearls of the meeting. So you are our pearls guy. Tell us, what were some of the biggest and best takeaways from this meeting?
Yeah, so I'll give you a lot of takeaways, not all of them, because we want you to come out next year and definitely explain it. But there are a lot of takeaways. I think people were just jotting down notes quite a bit. But some of my favorite ones, just kind of starting from the beginning and going through some of the ones that I was able to see. There were a few I had to miss as I was jumping over to set up for Relapse and the party. But Grant Collins always does such a great job. The room's always packed. Everyone wants to learn from the braces guy. I think a lot of us are actually seeing patients because of the fact that he is, has 5 million followers, and kids come in wanting the colors of the day, showing me, different types of layouts for different color arrangements. I think he helped really make braces cool again. So huge kudos to you, Grant, for all you do for the profession and making braces cool again. But one of the big takeaways is we all are going to face times in our practice where we mess up, right? We all have faced that. And then what makes a great practice compared to an average practice is going to be how quickly and effectively you solve that, and that you actually go above and beyond that. So he gives examples at the Ritz-Carlton. If he happens to, not have a bag or something, or type of salad, let's say that he wanted was sold out, they would go and find a way to either recreate that salad or take it off the bill, something not expected, right? So they get him a salad immediately. That's something that he wants, and then they don't even charge him for it. For example, when I used to work at the Wynn Steakhouse, there would be times when patients really wanted a particular something and we didn't have it at that steakhouse. And I would go to another steakhouse or another Italian restaurant and bring the food for them. And it was those moments that really made them go, wow. And they would come back time after time because you did something way above and beyond. So the key is fix it immediately and then do something not expected that is above and beyond. So an example in our practice would be you have a bracket that comes off, right? Let's say that bracket comes off twice. You know how devastating that can be. But when it comes off, you say, I'm going to get you in right away. I know it's 4:00 in our busy rush. I'm going to get you in. I'm going to fix it immediately. And then when they leave, hey, I want you to go to a movie on me. Give them movie passes. And then call later to check in to make sure that the brackets are staying on and that the patient's comfortable. So the whole idea of doing so much more when there's a mistake it kind of turns the mistake around from a negative to actually not only just a positive, but a raving fan. You can turn people, and Larry used to tell me this all the time, you can turn your worst critic into your biggest raving fan, because if they're vocal enough to tell you that they had a bad experience, they're also vocal enough to tell everyone that they know that is the best place to go. So don't look at that as,
there's some wisdom in that. There's some wisdom in that. That's just, that is street smarts right there.
For sure. And we can all use that. It's easy to dismiss it or get defensive, or our natural tendency is to get defensive and say, well, it's because of this or that. It's say, you know what? I'm so sorry that happened. I'm going to fix it right now. Yeah. Get the ego out. Realize if you're in that person's shoes, all you want to do is have it fixed immediately. But then what you don't expect is, oh my gosh, movie tickets too. And oh my gosh, you called me later. And, you know, just to really like make your highest priority in your practice should be an unhappy patient.
Yeah.
If you can make them happy. Of course, there's some patients you can't make happy. Obviously, they need to go somewhere else. And, you know, that we're not talking about that. We're talking about somewhere where you messed up and you know you did. So that was really great. Grant gave plenty of examples. The digital download is actually available if you want to go on and purchase that. We'll send you all of the videos so you have a chance to watch that and all the other talks. But I'll dive into a few other ones.
And can I just interject one thing here that I think is important? It's important for you to identify where your boundaries are, right? Like what is above and beyond for you, and then do that. I think you can universalize this type of principle, like go above and beyond, if each person knows what above and beyond is for them. Because otherwise, if you have someone who's not geared for that, like above and beyond, or maybe you have somebody who has like a sense of like inadequacy, and so they're going above and beyond constantly because they're trying to like feel more adequate. They're trying to validate themselves, but it's like this bottomless pit. Then you're just going to burn out. Then you're just going to burn out in that. And you're just going to be constantly like going above and beyond and trying to satisfy, but you're never satisfied even when they are happy because you don't feel fulfilled at your baseline. So I guess what I'm trying to say is the right way to universalize, I think, that type of message is know what your definition of above and beyond is and what's sustainable for you. Because I think too often we latch onto these ideals and we think, well, the ideal is this thing and I have to like aim for that. It's like, well, that ideal might be this thing for that guy who has this energy, right? Or this disposition, but yours might be different. It doesn't mean that it's not applicable. It just means that you have to be really mindful about who you are and what your definition of above and beyond is. Anyway, that's all I'll say about it.
And it doesn't have to be you. You can assign someone on your team that's probably better than you at that. You could even give them the title of like director of happiness, right? Or something like that. And then that be your person that is the one that gets on the phone and does all that. So you don't even have to be involved. But the fact is you give them grace, like say, hey, you could have, $50 per patient, no questions asked, use it to make them happy when they're sad. Like, you know what I mean? Like just, you don't even have to be involved. And that's probably a better way for a lot of us.
I remember Grant also says this, a lot of people will say this, is that you have to have written protocols for these things. So when something goes wrong, again, we all have a different standard of what is going above and beyond. So if you want consistency, you actually have a script. So if the bracket breaks, then movie tickets. That's something that's planned out ahead of time, because someone might say, going above and beyond is smiling when you dismiss them. Well, that's not going above and beyond really by our standards, right? So, or actually doing what you're supposed to do, walk them to the front as opposed to just sit in your chair and say bye, right? So again, having those written protocols in a team is also important so that you know that. Give us some more pearls, Chris. I know we're scratching the surface here, but we got a lot to cover. What else we got?
Yeah, let's dive into Dr. Kyle Fagala. We all know him, love him. Drummer, Relapse, founded Neon Canvas, which merged with HIP. So it's great. You kind of get the best of both worlds. I know you use Neon Canvas. I do too. I think, Brian, you do as well. So it's nice we have the experience. And for him to really come and talk about, now that he's reached a point of success, really defining what success is for you in the next chapter of life. And he talked a lot about different styles of practices. And he has an in-office course about it, which is really interesting. There's practices where you're just looking to open as many locations as possible to get as big as you possibly can. And you're kind of looking at that number as a goal. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's just a style of practice. Then there's another style of practice where you kind of want to do everything yourself. And maybe you're working 5 days a week and you just love orthodontics and you kind of want to do it yourself. And you don't mind working, more, doing more yourself. But what he found is the ideal practice for him, and what I think a lot of us are looking for, is what he calls the lifestyle practice, which for him is defined as about 3 days a week producing between $3 and $5 million. And then, with your overhead being somewhere around 50%, his goal is, of course, get to that 45%. But anywhere if you're in that 45 to 60 and you're, bringing home, $2.5 million, like you don't really need much more than that to pretty much do anything that you want, right?
All these greedy people, it's like all you need in life is $2.5 million a year, right?
Right.
Is that it?
It just sounds so out of touch. It just sounds so out of touch, doesn't it? Because
hey guys, look at me. I can be happy on $2.5 million a year. I don't need any more than that. Now, if I was making less, I'd probably bust my ass a little bit harder. But
right.
really, none of you need more than $2.5 million a year.
But I think the reality is that, of course, the fact that that's attainable, and it's not even like out of this world. Like, oh my gosh, it's like, okay, well, yeah, I've seen that, I've heard of that, I understand that, I know that. I think we're obviously pretty fortunate. We just have to acknowledge that and acknowledge that not everyone's situation is that.
Yeah, and that's his goal. It's not necessarily where we all we'll get to. I mean, I would love to. We'd love to be there. And for a lot of people, it might be a lower number, but it's a great goal. It's a great goal, but the goal isn't more, right? Like Morgan Housel talks about when he was at this meeting at this hedge fund manager who was making more in a day than they made in an entire year. And he looks at him, he says, how do you feel about this guy making more in a day than we do in a year? He's like, well, I have something that they'll never have, enough.
Yeah.
What is enough for you? And again, if you want to work 5 days a week and try to get to 6 million, the whole idea is like, if you could get to a crazy number and work, 5-6 days a week, and, I bet you could, if you're going to work late hours and you're going to do all that. But the idea of the lifestyle practice is that when you work 3 days a week, you have a lot of time to do other things that fill you up, that make you happy. And he talks about kind of the blueprint on how to get there, and, balancing life between fitness, family, faith, your practice, and relationships. So it was neat to see him do a deep dive into finding happiness. He went through a kind of a dark time around COVID, and it's great that when he shared his story, and, even though he had so much success and Neon Canvas was growing, his practice was growing, he was very, very depressed, and, kind of came out of that, learning how to change his practice to a lifestyle practice instead of just gotta, push to be as productive as you possibly can. So it was neat to see him share that, and the humility that goes with that. And then also shooting for a goal where you can balance life and practice.
Well, one of the things I liked most about his presentation was his focus on burnout. I thought that was really honest. And to me, there were definitely some things that resonated there with me. Is like, yep, I've definitely felt that. Yep, I've definitely felt that. And I think each of us has to assess how burned out we are. And we have to be conscious of what kind of model we want to have at work, because our working life is a big part of our life. Big part of our life. And I think we tend to compartmentalize and think, well, it's just work. Well, yeah, in an abstract, theoretical way, but it's all just mushed together. There aren't these boundaries that we think there are just because we draw these imaginary lines in our minds. Like, the reality is you have to be really intentional about, how is work affecting me?
Yeah.
How is it affecting my overall life? And what do I need to change in my work environment to be more balanced? So I really liked that. I thought that resonated a lot. And
absolutely,
something I'm trying to be mindful of. And of course, it takes planning and preparation, but you have to really be mindful of what it is you want out of work, and then set your mind to try and be intentional about it. I guess what I'm trying to say.
Another great pearl from Harrison Bagdan is, without even hiring another marketing agency, before you think about, if you're at a point where, hey, I just want to grow my practice, what's the number one thing I can do, whether you work with an agency or not? He says, increase your digital marketing spend on Google and Meta. That's the best way, dollar for dollar, to get as much of you and your website out there as you can. Now, of course, optimizing your site is something that a company can do to help you do that. And there's plenty of companies that optimize the SEO. But if you just want to get out to more people, that's the best way to go. I wouldn't waste your time with Yelp And really anything other than Google and Meta, probably Google being number one and Meta being number two. Almost everyone's on Facebook and Instagram, and everyone looks at Google. So if you're showing up top and, the first thing that pops up when people type in orthodontist in my area, you want to be high there. So another great one from Jill Allen. She talks about, from Ted Lasso, the idea of being a goldfish. Mm-hmm. And a goldfish is known for having a 30-second memory. And she says you should have a 30-second memory of the bad stuff in your practice, or where your team members do something bad, right? We all, or make a mistake. We all make mistakes. You got to be quick to forgive, really, and forget. And I really love that. And a lot of times we hold on to something like, you didn't get that bracket on right or whatever. But there's many times where we as orthodontists, we mess up too. So, have a 30-second memory like a goldfish for the bad stuff, and be quick to forgive. Love that. Amanda Chong gave lots of pearls on different AI tools that you can use. Fixer AI, if you're one of those people that have like 10,000 emails, that you're not a zero inbox person. This helps distill. It goes through all that and just gives you the important stuff to weed out all the bad stuff. I think that helps a lot of us. FYXER, yeah.
FYXER.
I need that.
Yeah, I know you do it. I know we both do. Dude, Kyle Faglis sees my phone. Like, I sent him a screenshot and he's like, what is wrong with your unread text? And I'm like,
I think any P's out there, can do that. Another one is ChatGPT Voice. It's really neat. You can click on, there's like a voice feature on ChatGPT and actually talk with that person as if they're like a live human being, which is really cool. Almost like it could be like for therapy or just distilling your ideas down. The AI sounds surprisingly realistic, like you're having a conversation with someone. You just have to enable it. So you don't necessarily have to type in the text, but Morgan and I were sitting at the pool the other day and just talking about how to deal with a teenager. And it was pretty amazing, the advice that was given. So using things like that is very helpful. Brad Chavatal, probably my favorite talk. He just went into like pearl after pearl after pearl. One big takeaway was knowledge without implementation is useless. You come to a meeting, you've got all this stuff, and we all write it down. We're great note takers, and then it goes in a file, and you never look at it again. He's like, you gotta write down 3 things you're going to put into your practice right away. You can get all this knowledge, but you've got to implement it. The other thing is, negotiating your credit card fees. Just spending a little bit of time making that call can save you tens of thousands of dollars a year. If you don't want to do it yourself, there's companies that do it. But he said, here's a script, and you can reach out to Brad. He's great. He'll share that with you. This is what you do. You call, you say this. This is exactly what they're going to say back. This is what you say back to them. And then all of a sudden you get this massive rate decrease, which is great. And
he's made posts about that in the forum too. So if you're interested in that, you could look up that post. And he has videos of how to do it, articles he's written. So he's a wealth of information.
Absolutely. And lastly, I'll leave you with some pearls from Ben Fishbein. I really like that. Even though his practice was titled going from 2 million to 29 million annually, which is insane. None of us will ever really reach that. He says, what you got to do is when you, I guess not.
No, you guys let me know when you get there. My $2.5 million a year. I'm
try harder, Chris. Try harder.
Live the frugal life of a millionaire.
Abundance mindset, Chris. Yes, what's wrong with you?
Thank you, Tony Robbins. I needed that. But he said, you want to play to your competitive advantage. So let's say you are a single doctor practice, you're going for a lifestyle practice. What's your competitive advantage, right? He says, really, for a lot of doctors, it's you meeting with dentists saying, hey, look, your patients are going to see me. Every time they're going to see me, I'm available there 3 days a week. We're open, 5 days a week. And really just, here's my cell phone number. Text me, call me. I will get back to you as soon as I possibly can. You can even say I'll be kind of overpromise, overdeliver, right? Just that you're, especially as a new doc, a new grad, your advantage before you've scaled to the point where you have these systems and you're just kind of going with the flow is that you got to be reaching out to referring dentists and saying, look, here's my cell. I will be your guy. I will take care of your patients. They are going to see me. Now, in Ben's practice, he has a lot of associates. So what's his competitive advantage? He's got a market everywhere. So he's got, the fish bus going to schools. He's in every, PTSA meeting known to man. He's in all, banners at the schools, all that stuff, just trying to be everywhere. and be, omnipresent. So that's his competitive advantage.
Quite a competitive advantage.
It is. But you don't want to go in there and say, man, I need to do exactly what Ben does, because maybe that's not your goal. Like Ben said, he was more efficient per patient when it was just a single practice, just him.
Yeah.
Now he makes a lot more now because he's scaled, but he still is not like per patient has the same yield, right? So you got to play to what works for you. Yeah. So, yep. Next thing is, he said, you don't need to give a sibling discount. He's like, if you have great systems, he's like, stop giving sibling discounts. It is. But his thought was, they're going to come back and they're going to see you. If they don't come back, then, you got to look at why. But most patients, they come to you, they're familiar with you, they love you. You don't need to give a discount on the next kid. Again, different thoughts there.
Well, so one really important thing there is there has to be a strong emphasis on relationship.
Yeah.
Yep.
If you're not going to offer a sibling discount. Because if you're systems oriented, but you're not focused on relationship, you have to have a sibling discount because it's more transactional. So again, you have to say, well, what kind of practice am I running? Am I running a transactional practice? Or am I running a practice built on relationship? If it's built on relationship, of course you can cut out the sibling discount. You can cut out a lot of stuff because now the relationship is what brings them in and is going to keep them loyal. So anyway, just a thought about that.
I just want to interject a little counterpoint to that too, because that's a controversial topic. And I think a lot of us do it, some of us don't. But one of the reasons that I like that is if it's offered if that information is presented at the beginning, if it's presented after the kid has treatment and there's a second kid and we're going to throw you a discount. I think that applies exactly what he said. But if I get a family of 5 who's shopping around multiple offices and I can tell them, well, we have a family discount. So your first kid is full price and every other kid after that is discounted. They're looking at that like, oh, well, that's not what the other guy offered me. So I think that it could be, it depends on how you present it. I think that you have to understand the principle behind this. I do agree with what he's saying. If you're offering that discount more as, if you don't have a solid reason for why you're doing it, but if you're trying to convert a big family, I think that's actually that is a nice little cherry on top. I'm not saying that you need that to sell the case. Ben probably doesn't. Maybe I do, but that's the way that I see that.
I think that's the key, Andy, is that you let them know at that first consultation with the first kid that you offer a sibling discount. Because if they're coming back with their second kid, they're going to start with you.
Correct.
You don't, maybe if you're not doing it at the initial consult with the family, then it almost seems useless. Like you're just wasting money, right? But if you do it in the beginning, I think that's a great pearl to take away. Is like, talk about your sibling discount at the first appointment with the family.
Right.
I love that. The other things you talked about is, especially if you're like with insurances and things like that, adding those additional things like a retainer program, whitening service. He does like Zoom whitening and gingivectomy services to your practice, or ways that you can kind of grow your bottom line without, increasing the number of starts, so to speak. And then the last thing you talked about is we all, focus on having core values. That's important. But he's like, add 10 core beliefs. As much as we talk about the importance of why, you still need to have the how. And so the 10 core beliefs are the how to your why. So things specifically, we show up on time. We give every patient an amazing experience. I think that's something that's nice to add. You have your mission statement, you have your core values, and then you have 10 core beliefs. So my takeaway was I need to sit down and write those out. And then that way every team member knows what the core beliefs are.
That's a great one. I haven't done that. I could definitely benefit from that level of intention.
Well, and when you think about our mindset is built on our beliefs.
Yeah.
And often we have limiting beliefs that, of course, if we're not aware of, are going to hold us back. So I think, like you said, Andy, it's a great opportunity to be intentional about what do I actually believe and what do I want my team members to believe? Because you can act out of belief. Again, that's more predictable. That's sustainable. So I think that's why if you go to a more core level of belief, there's a lot of wisdom in that. Because if you're just talking about values, well, how do you personify a value?
Yeah.
What behavior personifies a value? It's kind of subjective.
Yeah.
When you say, no, I believe this, it narrows things a little bit, like what behaviors are in line with that belief. I don't know. So I think it's closer. I think it helps model behavior better than something like a value. That's what.
So for an example, my value is that I want to have some work-life balance. And my belief is that I don't need any more than $2.5 million to get there. So, sorry,
on 3 days
Kyle.
a week.
But you're going to be hearing about that for a while, I think. Well, I want to talk a little bit because one of the things that I've really come to appreciate about these meetings is that not all of the value is found just in the lectures, but it's the conversations that happen in between them. And it's the hallway chats, the shared drinks, the impromptu debates like the one I had with Dino Watt before getting ready for our dance performance up there. And I think that this is where some of the real insights emerge that can't be captured on a slide deck or a recording. And that's really why I think going to these meetings in person matters. I think that it's great when you buy the recordings. It's great when you get the notes, but what you're really just getting is facts. And you're not really, we're talking about relationships a lot on this show, and you're not forming those relationships. You're not getting into the nitty gritty, the details. And at this last meeting, I had several conversations outside of the meeting, at the bars or in the vendor hall. And some of them really stuck with me. And I wanted to share some of the lessons that I learned here. I had a conversation with one friend who I go way back with, who has been going through kind of a challenging financial stretch, and practice isn't doing as well as they've wanted to. They've had some opportunities come and go, and was just kind of down on career. And it made me really start to think, like, what happens when you've built your life, your identity around this one pillar, which is your career, which is your financial stability. And then that starts to crack a little bit, maybe not crumble, but crack. And I thought, when I set out to be an orthodontist, I knew that I could do everything right. I could get the grades, I could get the board score, make the right connections. And in spite of that, I knew that every single year, there was always that one guy who deserved to get in and who just didn't. We all had those in our classes. And I recognize that luck has to play a part in any kind of success. So you have to be prepared for that. But at some point, that luck is going to be that X factor. And some people get it without preparation. They get a little bit more than others. And others, they prepare, and they never quite get it. So the point of this is that outcome that we're working so hard for is not always guaranteed. Brian, you talk about this a lot. And I when I was going through school, I asked myself, if it turns out that I don't make it into orthodontics, I'm that one guy who deserved it and didn't make it, what sacrifices would I regret the most in this journey? One way I think about this is, Chris, you're big into fitness. Brian, you are as well. And we recognize that diet plays a big role in fitness, but deprivation doesn't work. If you feel deprived, you're just going to hate every minute of it. And at some point you have to find a way to love the journey, to be, if it's going to be sustainable. If every day you get up and you're eating something that just makes you sick, that's not going to last. And if it does, what's the point? Because you hate your life. So again, what are the parts of my life that I would have resented giving up in the pursuit of a goal that was never reached? I think that question shaped a lot of my earlier choices. In college and dental school, I always worked really, really hard because I was motivated and I knew what I wanted. But I thought of this concept of pay yourself first. So in investing, pay yourself first means that before you pay your electric bill, before you pay your mortgage, you invest your first 10% into your retirement or into whatever is going to be growing your nest egg. Because if you don't do that, you're going to pay all of your bills and there may not be enough left over. And if you pay yourself first, you're going to find a way to get those other things done, but you're not going to sacrifice the part that feels like it's optional, but really is the most important thing. And for me, I invested myself into the gym, working out, relationships, friends. I was single when I went to dental school and I did not want to miss out on dating. And those are the things that just made me feel whole. And I've seen too many people sacrifice those parts of their lives, and then those are not easily reclaimed. There was a surgeon that I remember rotating with at UCLA, And he was, a few years older than me, maybe 10 years older than me, but he was committed to the hospital and talking to me. He was a nice guy. I actually really liked this guy, but this was his whole life. And he had kids that he never saw because his wife divorced him because he was too into his career. And he knew all of this, but it was too late. He can't get that back. And he was just feeling very regretful. And I thought, I just don't want to be that guy, especially if I don't even make it at the end. I mean, imagine how devastating that would be to lose everything. So I thought about, again, this one pillar as opposed to having several pillars. And if our identities, if who we value ourselves as is held up by more than one, then when one starts to crack or crumble, the rest of them can carry the weight. Carl Jung is one of my favorite guys. You guys know this. He was the father of MBTI, one of the most influential psychologists to ever live. And he discussed what he considered to be the basic factors for making happiness in the human mind. And there's 5 of these factors. The first one is good physical and mental health. I think of that like the foundation. If you don't have that, you can't really build on anything. Your health is paramount. Next comes good personal and intimate relationships, those found in marriage, family, friendships. So again, your support network there. The third one is going to be a faculty for perceiving beauty in art and in nature. This is one that I maybe underappreciate, but when I really think about it, some of the most peaceful moments of my life are just when I'm appreciating these more creative aspects or being able to find beauty in things. It really makes your life more fulfilling. Next is going to be reasonable standards of living and satisfactory work. And as we all know, that line is drawn at $2.5 million a year. If you can have that, then that is a reasonable standard. You don't need anything more. Sorry, Kyle. But again, my point being that most of us have that already. So reasonable standings and learning to have purpose and satisfaction in the work that you're doing. And then finally, the fifth one is a philosophic or religious point of view that is capable of coping successfully with the vicissitudes of life. And that's something we've talked about a lot. We talked about that with Grant Collins when we did our little retreat up in Sedona. It's one that I think that maybe I've undervalued. And when I look at these things, I think I want to put a little bit more time into that faculty for perceiving beauty and art, as well as this more spiritual component. I think that part of me is kind of shut down in that area, and I want to really emphasize that a bit more.
Go bite straight, boy.
Yeah, right.
A little more dance.
I don't know if you can call that beauty, though.
Not the way I dance. Clearly not.
Certainly not the way I dance.
Certainly not the way you dance. Well, again, the point here is when you diversify your identity across health, relationships, creative outlets, spirituality, while also recognizing that you do have enough, a setback in one area isn't going to take the whole thing down. So that was one conversation I had. Another one that I had was with someone who is very outwardly successful. I mean, like very outwardly successful. Someone I have a great relationship with, a personal friend, also a little bit older, I think maybe again, about at least 15 years ahead of me. But they've built this incredible life with collectibles, travel, freedom. I mean, you see the vacations and the cars and the fancy things. It's really hard not to envy it. But behind this enviable lifestyle is a void that they'd never be able to fill because they are unable to have children. And that's something that they've always wanted, and it's just never going to happen. And one of the things this person was telling me is that people look at them and they almost assume that it was a choice that they made, that they want those materialistic things instead of the kids. And, you know, there's even a tendency to judge them on that, but that's just simply not the case. And it just reminded me how easy it is to envy someone's highlight reel without really knowing the rest of their story. And there's an old saying I really try to keep in mind when I'm comparing to people who have much more in one area. Usually it's money. And it's that if you're going to envy someone, you have to take their whole life. Okay, so you can't just compartmentalize, oh, he drives a nicer car than me, he's more famous than me. You have to look at, well, he's got, you know, he maybe is on his third divorce, you know, and that's a devastating emotional toll. Or, you know, maybe he's ugly or something. I don't know. But the point of the matter is you can't just You can't just compare to the highlight reel. You have to take the whole. And I think about there's certain influencers in our profession. There's one guy I referred to as the Dan Bilzerian of orthodontics. Some of you may know him, and I like him. I consider him a friend, and it's fun watching his stuff. But it's when I look at that nowadays, it just looks exhausting to me because it's such hustle porn, And I've learned to value simplicity over spectacle to a very large degree. Power to these guys who are out there and, doing great things and showing it off. But, I'm at a stage where I'd really rather have peace than constant performance. One of the things I remember, Dovey Prero is big on Instagram. And we were chatting one time and he mentioned that his phone is a handcuff and he had to take it out several times there to just post or respond to comments and stuff. And he said it's a handcuff, and that you get benefits from doing that, but you have to know if that's you, if it's authentic. And, for me, it's just not. I think about how this concept also applies to the way that we digest pearls from these meetings. So the polished takeaways that we jot down, those clean bullet points, they're often overly reductive. And they don't capture that messy personal process that evolved behind the scenes. And, this is the magic of talking over a drink after the meeting with that guy who's just presented these 10 clean bullet points that if I could just implement these, step 2 is success. But hearing why they worked and the mindset behind it, how it evolved, you learn to fail first, and then you learn how it was adapted. And I just think that's the kind of nuance that you can't replicate through a PowerPoint or podcast clip. And of course, we're all wired differently. We have different skills, different markets, different personalities. And I consider that the team member who thrives under one leadership style might struggle under a different leadership style. And this is where I think that personality awareness is really important when it comes to finding what fits for you. And the goal isn't to copy someone else's system, but it's to understand why it works for them and if it aligns with who I am. And I think of confirmation calls, or yet another conversation that seems to keep coming up, but another conversation I had, and I'm vehemently against doctor doing confirmation calls. And again, that's controversial. And I know it works for some people, and I know that's heresy for some people, but I just recognize that it is so draining for me to do that. At the end of a long day, I just want to check out. I want to go home with my family and I just want to relax. Some people say do it on the car ride. Hey, you know what? My car ride is my time to decompress. I don't want to think about patients. I don't want to think about employees. I want to just get into my podcast or my Audible book. That's the only time I have that's really just for me. And I don't feel like I owe that to people. But at any rate, for me, it makes a lot more sense to just have a system for my TCs to do it. It's far more sustainable. Another thing is I know I'm going to forget. And the first time I forget, it's worse than if I just let her do the whole thing. So again, it's not going to work for me. Another example of this, another conversation we had, we talk about trying to get the doctor out of the consult as much as possible or shorten that time down. And if you have to understand the principle behind that. If you're the type of practice where the doctor is already very well known, they're already pre-sold on this guy, they don't need to get to know him, then that can work because the TC has already done it. And if you're, on the other hand, a smaller practice, a more boutique-y place where they're kind of shopping around and getting to know you, I think that spending some time in that consult can really be a differentiating factor. Again, assuming that is your personality. If you're personable and you connect well, there are some doctors who don't do that, in which case, you need to get them out of the consult ASAP and let the TC just work her magic because the doctor's personality is cardboard. I think you mentioned Ben Fishbein a couple of times. I was at his Fishbein Fundamentals a few years ago, and that was one of the pearls I picked up is he has created systems where, number one, his practice is so well known that people are coming in pre-sold. They're not trying to sell the case from the minute that patient walks in the door. It's more the TC just has to stay out of the way and not talk them out of the sale. Ben, by his own admission, is not the most charismatic guy in those situations. He has TCs who are far better at that than he is. So he tries to get as little FaceTime with him as possible because he doesn't need it. And in his case, maybe it even hurts his chances. But if your strength is that connection and you're in a different system, it may not be the best advice to remove yourself from that exam entirely, or even reduce it as much as possible. So I consider in both of these examples, I'd rather buy back my time somewhere else and then pour myself more into the things that I enjoy doing. And patient communication, patient connection is one of those things for me. And I think that this ultimately is the essence of success. It's not defined by efficiency alone, or even by money or making more than $2.5 million a year. It's defined by your life satisfaction. And you can optimize and automate all you want, but if you're neglecting the things that make you feel alive, then what's the point of that? The most fulfilled people I know have built multiple pillars to support them: family, purpose, friendships, health, and of course, financial security. But no single one defines their entire worth. So here's the point of all this stuff, is that I think the richest insights we gain, whether from a meeting or from life, don't come from the scripted parts. They come from the conversations that we have in between those. And from hearing someone's full story, not just their highlight reel, from learning to build a life that's diversified, resilient, and uniquely yours. Because when one pillar cracks, it's those others that hold you steady. And that's what keeps you standing tall when the spotlight moves on.
I love that. I love what you said about if you envy someone, you have to take their whole life. And I think we all have examples of that. Like, I want his finances, but I do not want his marriage situation or this or that or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
So,
or his hairline, it's like there's always something.
Well, I love I forgot to say one of my favorite pearls actually came from Brian, and this kind of segues nicely into his talk, but he, has this tattoo, Amor Fati, meaning love your fate. And I think there are times when I was a kid, I was like, maybe I wish I didn't spend so much time doing this or doing that, or I wish I had done this different. But if my life had not followed that exact path, and even through some of the shadows, it would not be what it is today. So fall in love with every step of the process of your fate, because it's taking you somewhere that's good. Yeah. And I love that. So even, in the darkest rain and shadows, like, know that you're coming into what's on the other end. And then without that, you wouldn't know how good life can be. It's kind of like if every song was just little happy high notes and there was no, dissonance or chaos, coming out of the suffering feels better than if you just kind of have your status quo of life. So enjoy the downs. As weird as it sounds, like feel the downs, know it's part of the process, and love your fate every moment of it. So Brian, I know he's our philosopher. He'll jump into more of that side of things today.
Well, how about it, Brian?
I loved what you said, Andy, and talking about the in-between spaces. You mentioned that you gained all this wisdom in between, like what was the official things and then maybe what you see, right? Yeah. And what's happening in between. And Chris, to your point, Amor Fati, and talking about accepting all of it, right? Like if you want to envy somebody, accept all of it. Reality includes everything. Okay. And so I think part of accepting all of it is saying, well, yeah, there's really crappy stuff that happens in life. And there is injustice. And some things are, quote unquote, not fair. And it's not transactional. Oh, but I really want it to be transactional. I want to believe that if I do this, then that will happen. If I work this hard, success is guaranteed. It's not. It's not. Now, it's correlated, so you're more likely to achieve success, but there's no guarantee because it's not formulaic. It's relational. So sometimes it relates and other times it just doesn't. So speaking of this in-between space, it's been referred to as a liminal space. Liminal space. So in philosophy or spirituality, it's this in-between space of tension. What you wished reality was and what you hate the most about reality and what reality actually is in between. It's not everything you want it to be, but you know what? It's also not as bad as you think it is on your worst days. It's just not. Mm-hmm. So this in-between space. And I look at, the meeting, we talked about this earlier, but there were some really great things. And I had to be really conscious about my emotional reaction to both my disappointments and to the things I felt content and happy about in terms of the execution, the things that we did that we were, in control of, and also the things that we were not in control of, like weather and government shutdown, et cetera, right? And I guess the point that I want to make about this is wisdom comes in the tension. And I think too often in my life, I think it's a common thing to humanity, we don't like the tension. So we'd rather identify more with the positive. So we immediately, I don't want to think about the negative. I'm just going to think about all the great things. And I'm going to gaslight myself about the things that weren't great and the things that I feel like, I can do better in this way. Our meeting could be better in this way. And you know what? We got to go back to the drawing board on this, this, and this, and make sure that we're delivering this, that, and the other for our sponsors and our attendees, right? And so it's easier to focus all on the negative because there's no tension there. It's just you're just focused on the things that didn't go well. Or it's easier to focus just on the positive. But that's not reality. Again, reality includes both. And so reality means actually being in this liminal space willfully when you know you could run to the positive and gaslight yourself about that the negative isn't really bad. Or you could run to the negative. Well, I don't even see any positive. The whole thing just was a big disappointment.
Yeah.
And staying in the middle space and saying, you know what? Some things went well. Oh, and some things just didn't. Man, some things, and some things on my own end. Like I gave a presentation that to me was it was a meaningful message, and it didn't go exactly how I planned. Now, I don't think it was, I didn't feel bad about it, but at the same time, the notes, I was planning to use notes. And when the notes came up, and I had been very intentional about duplicating my slides so that when I clicked through, the notes would show, because of course, you guys both know my tendency to go on a tangent and to speak in a way that's, I know it's crazy. No, but I think my greatest gift is my spontaneity and my genuineness, but that's also my greatest weakness, and that's not a surprise. That's true with all of us. Our greatest gift is the place where we're also, the weakest or we're wounded. So, but I guess for me, I really felt that as I allowed myself to be in this liminal space and kind of be dissatisfied on some way, in some elements about, how my talk didn't go as planned. And I hoped that I'd been able to cover this or that or the other, or I wanted to read my notes and it didn't quite work out. But you know what? It wasn't about me, and it wasn't about impressing people. I knew that. I was there to try and help people. And so if reality, amor fati, if reality means things didn't go as I expected, well, then that's ultimately the best thing for me. So what does it mean? Well, maybe it means having some more humility, maybe I'm never going to be a great public speaker. Do I even need to be? Well, maybe it'd be good. So I'm okay, I'm committed to learning more about public speaking and seeing how I can tailor public speaking more to suit my strengths and minimize my weaknesses, just because that's another way to reach people. And I believe, hey, we each have something meaningful to share. And if it's not about me and my ego and me feeling great about myself or having people think I'm important, but if it's more about, hey, this is my purpose is to try and pass something along meaningful because we're all in this interconnected web, and we all just actually rely so much on each other. That's one huge takeaway from the meeting, that as I was in this liminal space and kind of feeling disappointed about some things, but not attaching too much to it, because I know the rabbit hole that can be. There's this, but at the same time, it opened my eyes to these wonderful things that I was able to let the less substantial kind of pass away, like ego things. Okay, just drop that. You can just let go of that. Okay, so accept reality. Well, yeah, again, this is the way things are, and I can live with that, and I can learn what I need to learn from that. And attaching more to the substantial, I'm so grateful for these relationships. My wife in particular, so grateful for that relationship. I just feel that's just been such a blessing to me. My kids. And then I looked around and I saw, Andy, you with Jenny, and Chewy, as I like to call it, as Chloe goes by.
Yeah.
And Chris, your whole family there. And to see, both of your parents and Donna and the fact that your dad drove across the country, as you mentioned, and they were so happy to do it. And your dad was with his business partner. I thought, okay, and he's been business partners for 25 years. Obviously, he's sustained this relationship. And your dad can convince, well, I shouldn't even say convince, that's the wrong way. Your dad can ask this business partner to go on a trip to support his son's orthodontic conference and listen to a show, and your dad's business partner's totally in. Like, there's something to be said about those relationships that are that survive that long.
Yeah.
And where there's that much willing sacrifice. And your parents, it wasn't like they were put out like, oh, well, we've had to drive across the country. It was just like, we love being a part of this.
Yeah.
And again, the way that your parents embraced Donna, and of course, seeing all the Relapse family and having, like you, Andy, multiple conversations with members of the band, people that come to the meeting year after year, and just how much I like them and am grateful for them. Some great conversations with sponsors. So there was a lot to be grateful for that went well. And of course, there was some that didn't go as planned. And we have to say, well, no, we have to look at those things. We can't just dodge them. And you know what? To be conscious of them and to be able to identify them, I think earns trust, because then people can say, well, I can trust that you're actually going to be honest in your assessment, and that you're attached to reality enough that I can trust that you're going to fix this, or you're going to address what didn't go well. You see what I'm saying? So yeah, I think we owe it to our attendees. We owe it to our sponsors. We owe it to, anyone who attends, because it's a sacrifice in time, and we're all so busy that we owe it to them to really be invested in this in a meaningful way. And again, that just goes back to what we talked about at the beginning a little bit, that things are sustainable when you have a sense of purpose. And when you know that purpose, and when you know yourself. And we've talked a lot about that. Andy, you've touched on that quite a bit. Like, know yourself, know who you are and what makes you happy, and invest in those things. So, speaking of Amor Fati, I have I tattooed that on my forearm this summer in Rome, and it means love your fate, as you mentioned, Chris. And I actually designed it to be in the shape of a cross. And I've really learned to love the symbol of the cross in the sense of it's a collision of opposites. It's a collision of opposites. So it's symbolic to me in a very universal way that transformation happens at the collision of opposites. When you allow yourself to hang in that tension, as Carl Jung would say, there's wisdom that happens in the tension. So it was a good opportunity to actually practice that. Like, some of the things I felt like, oh, I'm just so disappointed in this or that or the other. Again, mostly about me, my efforts, my execution, and to say, well, okay, well, I spoke about these things. I have to live them here. Got to live them here. It's not just about talking about it, because what you do is ultimately way more important than what you say.
Absolutely.
What you actually do. Way more important. I don't know. Has that become easier for you guys in your lives? I feel like as I've gotten older, I've been able to attach more to reality and accept the disappointments, even about myself. Like, I just sort of suck at this. And, I'm going to work on it. I am. But maybe I'll get better. But, maybe by the grace of God, it'll change. But maybe not. Maybe I'll just always be sort of crappy at this.
I think one of the quintessential things about that Enneagram 3 is that we find our love through success. And I will admit that's very, very hard for me. If I have a goal and I do not make that goal, I beat myself up. I go into a dark place. And I used to think it served me. Tony Robbins would say, be real honest with yourself. Like, no, you're like, the presentation I just delivered, it was not good. So make it better, right? But then I think we get to a point where we overemphasize that, and it demoralizes us, it defeats us. I don't know if it serves us that much anymore. I think in the beginning stages, it's a great way to get a fire under your butt and get moving. But at some point, you got to realize there's no end to success. There's no end to that climb. And you might get to the top of the mountain and be there alone and miserable. And so I've learned to kind of let that go and focus more on, how are my relationships right now? Did I maybe reach a few people that might have changed the way that they practice. Yes. And there's always someone that takes that thing away. I felt like that on the show. We played all these songs and everyone was cheering. And then we play a song by Rush, and most of the dance floor cleared out because there's not a whole lot of Rush fans, but there are like 3 guys in the crowd that were Rush fanatics. And they were just like, oh my God, I love Rush. I love you. I'm always coming to your show because you played a Rush song. Right. So like, there's always those few people in the audience that hear the thing that you said that might change their life, but we're so focused on, well, what did the survey results come out as? What was my overall percentage? Like, how was the room full, right? Did enough people come up to me afterwards? How did I, you know what I mean? But maybe it's just that 1 or 2 people that heard that Rush moment or that pearl that you gave that changed their practice. So I think, like you said, encompassing all of it, trying to be the best you can, but realize that, it is what it's supposed to be.
Well, Brian, I had 2 thoughts based on what you were saying. And the first of it is I think that as we get older, ideally, part of maturing is letting go of that ego, because I know that I can relate very much to what both of you guys are saying. I beat myself up. I had this I still have it. We all have it. This little drill sergeant in my head that says, you're not good enough and you have to get better. It's not a judgment thing. It's not like, it shouldn't be demoralizing, but sometimes it can become demoralizing. But the point is, if you're not where you want to be, giving up is not going to get you there. And if it's an important enough goal, you do have to sometimes just nut up and show up. Now, part of what makes that challenging is my second idea, which is that there's always going to be this tension between grace and effort, or we think about balancing the masculine and the feminine. Brian, you talk about this a lot. And there's that masculine energy, which is just drive. It doesn't matter. You just do what it takes, whatever it takes, and you just finish it. And there's that feminine energy, which is a little bit more forgiving. Like, well, you have a sprained ankle right now. Why don't we take care of that before we get up there and really force our way through this marathon? And I think that having kids has forced me to confront that in a very real way, because there's certain times where, like when Chloe smashed that TV and she was not taking it seriously and she thought it was a joke, that was a time I had to be stern. That masculine energy had to come out and show her, this is serious and you need to stop. Now, if instead that TV had fallen on her, she had hit it and it had fallen on her and now she's injured and crying, it's a much different scenario. Yeah, she still broke the TV and she still shouldn't have been doing that. And there's going to be a time to teach that lesson, but it's not when she's in emotional crisis. At that point, there has to be some grace, and I have to be the father who says, okay, it's okay, calm down, it's all right. Are you okay, sweetie? And, get her calm. And then later we'll have that discussion about what you did was inappropriate and this is a lesson for you. So I don't think it's as simple as you can beat yourself up in this scenario, and in this scenario, you just give yourself complete grace. Brian, a lot of what you're talking about is having that tension, that liminal space, being able to hold both of those thoughts at once. It was both good. And there was also some area for improvement. And if you can, the ego is going to want you to make a judgment. It's going to be, the meeting was good or the meeting was bad. I'm good or I'm bad. I'm worthy of love or I'm not worthy of love. And the fact of the matter is, black and white. One thing I've really come to appreciate is that the line between good and evil cuts through the heart of every man. And we have to remember that we all have both good and evil within us. And I think that applies to our groups too, or this tribalism. We have to recognize that most of these discussions or these conflicts are not a clear battle between right and wrong, good and evil. Sometimes they are, or that could be a function of the values that you hold most dear. But what you also have to recognize is that the other party here is acting in what they consider to be their most strongly held values. And there is good to that too. It just may not be as valuable to us. Right. But no one is the villain of their own life story. And no one, with very few exceptions, no one acts in what they consider to be evil. Right. And I think that in learning in embracing our own imperfection and recognizing that we don't always get it right and we're all just trying to do the best, maybe we can provide some grace for some others who have conflicting views. So Yeah, that's my thoughts.
Yeah.
Love it.
I love the balance between accountability and forgiveness.
Yes.
And the reason, like, whether we want to say like progressive ideology or conservative ideology, whether we're talking about orthodontic treatment or whether we're talking about politics, I think a better way to look at these things is not which side is quote unquote right, but to say they're both right and they're both wrong. Meaning, of course, there are times where this way of approaching the situation is the right way. But again, have to focus on relationship and particularity, meaning each present moment is a unique present moment. So each person you're dealing with right now, this is a unique situation that's never happened before. So you have to decide what's the best way to, what's the best mindset to use right now? Is it one of grace or is it one of accountability?
Yes.
And what's the best for me? Not what feels the best, but like if I'm being conscious and being honest, I'm using my, what hopefully we each have some wisdom that we've gained along the way. I'm using the tools I've gained to the best of my ability to make a decision. And you know what? I will bear the weight of that decision, meaning I am consciously choosing to apply grace to myself right now. Why? Because I've looked at it and I can see that if I don't, it's going to be more harmful than good. So I have to apply grace right now. Or say, you know what? I really need to improve in this area. I really do, because there are real consequences if I don't improve in this area. There are real consequences that matter to me and matter to people around me. I just got to, like you said, Andy, nut up and just buckle down. And it might be unpleasant to accept this about myself or that about myself. You know what? That's what needs to be done. Why? Because doing that, although it will be uncomfortable, is going to be the better thing in the long run. So I guess the older I get, the more I realize that both things are often true, but it depends the situation. And that's, again, liminal space. It's not satisfying because people want you to choose a side. Well, are you Republican or Democrat?
Yeah.
Are you a non-extractionist or are you this? I mean, it's like, well, each situation's different. And I don't know why that's so hard for us to accept, but it's still so hard for me to accept, even just talking about the meeting. Part of me just wanted us to just focus on all the negative because it felt so much better. Just, well, I can fix this. Now I can focus on fixing it. Or just the positive. Well, because it feels uncomfortable. Focus on what I didn't do well or what I think I could have done better or what just generally holding people's disappointments. Well, this and that and the other, right?
This reminds me of Mark Manson. He wrote The Subtle Art of Not Giving a F***. And what his response to that is, in today's society, it's human nature not to want to be average. We don't want to be in that liminal space. We want to be extraordinarily popular. We want to be extraordinarily successful. But if we can't have that, we want to be extraordinarily victimized, or we want to be extraordinarily cursed in some way.
The ego wants to be unique and special.
Yes, exactly. And again, if you can't be uniquely quote unquote good, you can be uniquely quote unquote bad or uniquely disadvantaged. And that is a limitation of our human mind. It's a cognitive distortion that we have, is that it needs to be good or bad. Everything we think in binary terms. And it's so uncomfortable to say, well, it's both. We just are not created that way. But so many things happen, so many negative feelings, negative outcomes occur from not accepting that reality. Another thing that I considered as you're saying this balance between masculine and feminine energy, how often do we provide feminine energy inwardly, when it comes to, let's say, our beliefs or our values, and we mess up, or our tribe messes up, and we apply feminine energy there. It's okay. Your intentions were good. You're still pushing in the right direction. You just stumbled this time, but we're not even going to talk about that because I know your intentions were where they should be, and I still love you. But then when the other side messes up, the other side violates that same principle that you were very quick to forgive when it was your team. Now that other side messes up, and now it's all masculine energy. You need to eat this. You need to sit like this is going to. You were revealed as a hypocrite, and you need to own that and take that walk of shame in the public arena.
Accountability.
Of course. And I understand that so well. I mean, like I feel that so often. But again, if we can get to this place of compassion, of love, especially for your enemies. I mean, again, this is what Christ literally spoke about, is that compassion for the downtrodden, for your enemies. Then that is really the only path forward that doesn't involve darkness. Right. And I think that was one of his greatest teachings that ironically people have just kind of cast aside or apply unidirectionally. It's like grace for us, grace for me, but not for thee. And it doesn't work that way. And that's, I think, because the problem is the other polar opposite is applying that exact same logic in the other direction. And this is how you get holy wars.
Yeah, that's really good stuff. That's really good stuff. I think just to come full circle, it comes back to what is your belief, and be intentional about it, because guess what? Ultimately, you have to choose, or a belief will just go in by default. Like, you have to hold some belief, whether it's conscious or unconscious. So what do you believe? And we get so frustrated about, well, is it true? And again, to say, of course it's true. Sometimes. Yeah. Sometimes. Yeah. But what kind of universe do I want to live in? Yeah. Well, I want to live in a universe where, faith, hope, and love abide. Like everything else passes away. Everything else passes away. But faith, hope, and love abide. Okay, well, so I want to choose a belief where, to echo what you said, Chris, I believe that this is all going somewhere good. What does good mean? Well, I've had to broaden my definition, because before it wanted to exclude the bad stuff that happens. Yeah. Well, that's not good. But Amor Fati would say, it's all good. Oh, okay. So how do I make sense of all the bad stuff that happens to me, and the things that could happen to me, and the things that have happened out there that are unjust and awful and terrible? And how do I still believe that it's good? Well, because I know that someone out there can receive that bad, and they can choose love and compassion instead of retribution. Yeah. Because someone can do that and has done that, that means that, okay, good can, quote unquote, overcome evil. So I guess just saying, because I think before it's like, well, is it true? Is it true? Is it good? Is it bad? I don't know. And you try and look for all this evidence of, as if you could ever even prove that. Right. You have to choose, and you have to accept that what you choose, you will make your reality that way to a degree. So, well, do I want my life to be loving? Yeah. Okay. Well, so then I got to find the love in all this stuff, even the unjust, the capricious, the random, the painful, the disappointing. And so I think intentionality is important. And ultimately, I really liked a lot of the things you guys said. And I think this has been a really great conversation. I've enjoyed it a lot.
And to come full circle with NASA, one of the big things that I took away from one of the videos was the fact that there are more planets than grains of sand. And this is your problem, right? Like, this is what you're going through right now. There's something majestic about just the infinite expanses of the universe, and how sometimes we get so beaten up by something we're going through personally. And then when we realize how small but important we are in this vast universe, it's something comforting about that, being just part of the whole. Well,
absolutely. For those of you who have kids, you know that we basically described the theme of K-pop Demon Hunters for the last 20 minutes here. But Brian, you got to check that one out. Chloe watched it at your house with your son. She still calls it the show that we watched at Brian's house. So, but definitely a good one. Well, guys, that is a wrap for season 2, episode 1. And as always, if you've liked what you're hearing, go ahead and give us a review and a subscribe. And if you didn't like it, well, kudos to you for making it this far out of pure spite, I guess. As a reminder, please consider sharing your thoughts and feedback on the episode by emailing us at orthodonticpearls@gmail.com. If it's constructive, goes against the grain, or just seems interesting to us, we'll share it on the next episode and give you a shout out. Also, if you're an orthodontic vendor and would like to reach over 9,000 orthodontists across the world, consider one of our sponsorship packages for the podcast, forum, or the annual meeting. Opportunities start at just $100, and there is no better way to get your message out. Thanks again, everyone, for tuning in. Thanks to my co-hosts for being with us today. This was a fun one. No guest today, but I think that we covered a lot of material, and this was a very, very interesting topic that I know is near and dear to all of our hearts. So again, thanks for your time here. And for all of you out there, we will see you next time.